Where would you rank Connor Wong in today's catchers? Do you think
Um,
he's like average middle ground catcher?
I think he's middle of the pack to the higher side of the middle. He's in
Okay.
probably that 10 to 15 range. I mean, that's a position that when you look around baseball, there's a lot of. I mean, we saw Trevino get exposed badly last
Yeah.
night by the Red Sox.
Yeah.
That's a I feel like that position rides this wave. Like we had this era, this whole generation of great catchers. They've all retired. Then we kind of had this lack of catchers. And then
Yeah.
you had a few pop up, and but you just it's not a position you have consistently good players at. And I think that Connor Wong, I'd say, yeah, he's in that kind of 10 to 15 range and climbing. He's one of the few guys who's on the way up.
So I mean, top three catchers in the game right now. Who do you think of?
Ugh, I mean, it depends on what you're rating him on, but I mean,
Oh, overall, just
Real
overall.
Muto is clearly in
I
there.
yeah.
Um, I mean, Patrick Bailey in San Francisco has been really impressive.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know that he's in that echelon yet, but he's when it comes to catching a game, there may not be a better catcher to do it.
Gabby Moreno is working his way
Gabby
up there.
Moreno's another young guy on the way up. Wong's a guy on
He's
the way up. Um,
Moreno's got a cannon.
he does. Like if I had to pick the top three catchers, I feel like it's kind of
Would you put Cal Raleigh
Realmuto.
at the top?
What's that?
Cal Raleigh?
I think Cal Raleigh's in that probably top five. I would probably go Sean Murphy and Realmuto and at the as kind of the top two. Um,
Travis Darno, and I mean
I mean, yeah.
offensively when
I
he's in
mean,
there,
you know, you've
but
got Langoliers out in Oakland who's making a case. Like
Jonah
you've got some
Heim,
Jonah Heim. It's hard. It's hard to pick a top three. I feel like you
Contreras
have
is
yeah, the control and they're both good for different reasons. I feel like you've got kind of Murphy and Real Muto are kind of one and two, and you can pick what order they come in. Then you got probably 7 or 8 guys that are like just kind of like bunched in behind them that fill out your top 10, and you can
yeah,
put them in any order you want because they're all good for different reasons.
yeah,
And then I
fair.
think Connor Wong sits kind of just outside of that group looking in, and may find his way into that group.
Adley Rushman, how can we forget about
Oh
him?
yeah, sorry, Adley Rushman, duh, he'd be your
Yeah,
third.
yeah. So
And then you got everybody else just kind of like crams into the next 6 or 7 slots to fill out a top 10 and
yeah, Sal Perez. I mean,
Al
there
Perez.
are some decent catchers out there
Yeah, and Perez is
that
towards
are
the end
good.
of his career, so he's
Yeah,
not what he used to be.
he's still hitting three
I
something
know,
though.
but
Like
his behind the plate, he's not quite as
right, right.
quite as
I,
agile as he used to be. He's a bit
I,
of a
I mean, he's
refrigerator
36
back
to
there.
37, right? Like
Yeah, got a lot of miles in those legs.
yeah, absolutely, dude. Dude, I
But yeah,
couldn't catch if I had a chair back there right
yeah,
now.
no,
No, thanks,
completely
man.
understood. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, you've got a you're kind of your 3 or 4 elite level catchers and a 6 or 7 guys that are kind of in that next tier, and then I think Connor Wong slots in behind them and, kind of
yeah,
on the
that's
way up.
fair. Yeah,
And then you got the other side of it where you've got guys like Trevino who have been kind of on the way down the last couple of years, and Maldonado, who's, I mean, Alejandro Kirk, who's fallen way off the map. Like you got a lot of
yeah,
guys that were in that group that have fallen out of it.
yeah. I can only imagine how tough it is to sustain your hitting while catching that many games too. I mean, your legs are just gone. I don't care if they're
No.
how strong you are. After a while, there's a lot of wear and tear. Like it is what it is. So then like they say Maldonado is one of the best defensive ones because pitchers love
Yep.
throwing to him. He calls a great game. He handles the pitching staff. And that's why the Red Sox loved Veritek for so long because he
Yep.
had such a vast knowledge of every single pitcher on that staff. There's more to catching than just hitting and catching the ball and
Yep.
throwing runners out. It is the intricate part of the game that not a lot of people understand or they think is boring. Um,
Well, and
but yeah,
I mean, rating a catcher is hard too. Like I look at so like let's look at the top 5 catchers in the NL right now. You got the Contrerases, JT Realmuto, Will Smith, Sean Murphy.
Will Smith, forgot about that name
Yep.
too. It's a good one.
But you got some of these guys who are much more defensively minded. A couple of these guys that are much more offensive, and a couple that are a blend. Um, it's hard. It's hard to pick a catcher because you really have to decide what kind of catcher you want. What's more important to you? How they call a game, what they bring to the plate, because you don't generally get both. You look in the American League, you got Adley, you got Sal Perez, you got Jose Trevino, you got Danny Jansen with the Blue Jays, Jonah
Yeah.
Heim with the Rangers. Heim is much more, I would say he might be a little bit more balanced than the other guys because he's very good behind the plate and has some pop. Sal Perez is not as good behind the plate, but has some pop. Rushman can do both, but he's also on the younger side. You know, Trevino is more of a defensive first. It's like how do you
Yeah, it's hard.
compare those guys when they're so different? And that's the struggle with that position is what do you value? I look at a guy like Connor Wong who plays very good defense, very good arm, and has some pop. So like he's got a little bit of both. So to me, he's worth more. He's worth more than a Trevino to me because Trevino doesn't really give you the offensive piece. On
Right.
occasion he does, but he's really
But
more of a defensive catcher.
but in that Yankees lineup, Trevino doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to provide that pop because you got Soto and Judge and
Exactly.
LeMahieu and
Works out
Verdugo.
great.
Right. So
So
like
it is
it's a
catcher to me
fit.
is a very, very subjective position.
Yeah. And it is. It's a fit from team to team. I think that was a
It
perfect
is.
way to put it. Like, like he fits on that team because they need a decent backstop, not necessarily a guy that goes out and also hits, 330 every year, Joe Mauer.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
you're right.
your offensively oriented catchers are few and far between.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think Connor Wong gives you a good blend, and because of that, in my mind, he's got more value because he can do both.
Right.
Maldonado, by far the best defensive catcher in baseball, can't hit to save his life.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? The Astros gave up on it. It was just the defense was so good, but it wasn't good enough to overcome the fact that he was a black hole at the plate.
Yeah. Which crazy. But yeah, I've never actually like sat really broke it down and been like, it is. It's really hard to rank catchers because do you do it defensive metric? Do you do it offensive metric? Do you do it a combination of both?
Right.
Or what? It depends on what the team needs in that situation for sure.
Yeah. And
So
to me, if a catcher can't play the position, well, the offense to me doesn't matter.
right.
So that's like
Right.
I look at a guy like Sal Perez, great offensively, still good defensively, not like he used to be. But he's now reaching a point where defensively he's beginning to become he's bordering on is he helping you or hurting you defensively?
Yeah.
He can still throw, he can still move, but he's not what he used to be.
And he's massive too. Isn't
He's a
he like
huge
six,
guy.
seven? Like
Yeah. He's a big boy.
yeah.
And Adley Rushman is another one of those guys, blend. Very good defensively, not elite defensively, but he's very good.
Yeah.
But he hits.
Yeah. And that always sells. Hitting
It
sells.
does. And the
Chicks dig the
Orioles
long
need the
balls.
bat. So that works great in their lineup.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The Astros won with Maldonado for years, hitting $150
Right.
because they didn't need the offense, but they needed somebody who could catch a good game, call a good game, and throw base runners out.
Yeah.
Which he
Well,
did.
you don't need offense when Yordan Alvarez hits a 3-run bomb every other inning in the playoffs. So like
Yeah, no, it's kind of irrelevant at that point.